The December wind cut through Nashville like a knife, carrying with it the promise of snow and the bitter reminder that winter had no mercy for those without shelter. Marcus Thompson pulled his thin jacket tighter around his shoulders as he walked down Broadway, the neon lights of the honky-tonks casting colorful shadows on the wet pavement. The sounds of live music spilled from every doorway, a cruel symphony that reminded him of everything he had lost. 6 months ago, Marcus had been a different person. He'd worked at Gibson Guitar Factory, lived in a modest apartment in East Nashville, and spent his evenings writing songs and playing at open mic nights. But when the factory downsized and he lost his job, everything unraveled quickly. Unemployment benefits barely covered rent, and when his landlord sold the building, Marcus found himself on the streets with nothing but his guitar, a backpack of clothes, and dreams that seemed more distant with each passing day. At 22, Marcus had always believed that talent and hard work would be enough. His voice had the kind of raw, honest quality that made people stop and listen, and his songwriting came from a place of genuine emotion. But the music industry in Nashville was brutal, and without connections or money, even the most talented artists could find themselves lost in the shuffle. Tonight was particularly harsh. The temperature had dropped below freezing, and Marcus's fingers were too numb to play his guitar effectively. He'd made only $12 busking outside the Ryman Auditorium, not nearly enough for a motel room. As he walked past the glowing windows of restaurants and bars, watching families and couples enjoying warm meals, the weight of his situation pressed down on him like a physical force. That's when he remembered the Mercy House shelter on 3rd Avenue. He'd avoided it for weeks, clinging to his pride and the hope that his situation would improve. But pride wouldn't keep him alive on a night like this. The shelter was a converted warehouse, its brick exterior weathered but welcoming. A simple sign by the door read, "All are welcome." Marcus hesitated for a moment, knowing that walking through those doors would be an admission that he'd hit rock bottom. But the wind picked up again, and survival trumped pride. Inside, the shelter was warm and filled with the quiet conversations of people who understood struggle. The main room held rows of cots, and a smaller area served as a common room with mismatched chairs and a television. The smell of coffee and something that might have been soup filled the air. Marcus approached the intake desk, where a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and graying hair smiled at him. "First time here, honey?" she asked gently. Marcus nodded, unable to find his voice. "I'm Betty Rodriguez, the night coordinator. What's your name?" "Marcus Thompson." "Well, Marcus, you're safe here. We've got a cot available, and there's still some dinner left if you're hungry. Sit." She handed him a clipboard with forms. "Just fill out what you can. Everything's confidential." As Marcus completed the paperwork, he noticed other residents settling in for the night. There was an elderly man reading a worn paperback novel, a woman about his mother's age knitting what looked like a scarf, and a young man not much older than himself staring blankly at the television. Each person carried their own story of hardship, and Marcus felt a strange sense of belonging among these forgotten souls. After eating a bowl of surprisingly good chili and cornbread, Marcus found his assigned cot. The man in the next bed introduced himself as Robert Bobby Williams, a former construction worker who'd been laid off after a back injury. "Been here about 3 weeks," Bobby said quietly. "Betty and the volunteers, they're good people. This place, it gives you hope, you know." Marcus nodded, though hope felt like a luxury he couldn't afford. He pulled his guitar case closer, one of the few possessions he'd managed to keep throughout his ordeal. "You play?" Bobby asked, noticing the instrument. "Used to," Marcus replied. "Still do, I guess. Just not sure why anymore." "Music's got a way of healing things," said a voice from across the aisle. It belonged to an African-American woman in her 50s with intelligent eyes and a warm smile. I'm Dorothy Jackson. Been staying here off and on for about 2 months. Are you related to Alan Jackson? Marcus asked, recognizing the famous surname. Dorothy laughed softly. No relation, honey, though I sure do love his music. You country? Born and raised on it, Marcus said. My dad used to play Garth Brooks, Alan Jackson, George Strait, all the classics. Got me started on guitar when I was 8. The mention of his father brought a familiar pang of grief. Marcus's parents had died in a car accident when he was 19, leaving him alone in the world. Their life insurance had helped him through a few years, but eventually, that money ran out too. As the lights dimmed for the night, Marcus lay on his cot, staring at the ceiling. The shelter was quiet, except for the occasional cough or shifting of blankets. Despite the warmth and safety, sleep eluded him. His mind wandered to better times, to stages where he'd performed and crowds that had appreciated his music. Around midnight, he heard someone crying softly. It was a young woman a few cots over, trying to muffle her sobs in her pillow. Without thinking, Marcus sat up and quietly reached for his guitar. He tuned it as softly as possible, then began to play a gentle melody. The crying stopped. In the dim light, Marcus could see several residents had propped themselves up to listen. The song that came to him was one his father used to sing, a Garth Brooks classic about finding strength in difficult times. Marcus's voice, though quiet, carried perfectly in the hushed space. As he sang, something magical happened. The despair that had been weighing on his chest began to lift, replaced by something he hadn't felt in months. Purpose. This wasn't about making money or becoming famous. This was about connecting with people who understood pain, offering comfort through the universal language of music. When the song ended, there was a moment of perfect silence. Then Dorothy Jackson whispered, "That was beautiful, son. Thank you." Others murmured their agreement. The young woman who had been crying sat up and mouthed, "Thank you," across the darkened room. Even Bobby, who had seemed hardened by his circumstances, was wiping his eyes. Near the intake desk, Sarah Mitchell paused in her paperwork. The 25-year-old social worker volunteered at the shelter 3 nights a week, helping with intake and providing counseling services. She'd been updating resident files when the music began, and now she found herself completely captivated by the young man's voice. Sarah had been working with homeless populations for 3 years, ever since graduating with her master's in social work from Vanderbilt. She'd seen hundreds of people pass through these doors, each with their own story of hardship and resilience. But there was something special about this performance, something that transcended the usual dynamics of shelter life. She quietly approached the sleeping area and found herself looking at Marcus, who was gently placing his guitar back in its case. Their eyes met across the dimly lit room, and Sarah felt an unexpected flutter in her chest. There was pain in his eyes, but also depth and kindness. "That was incredible," she whispered. Marcus looked embarrassed. "I hope I didn't wake anyone." Someone was upset, and music, it usually helps. "You helped," Sarah said softly. "I'm Sarah Mitchell, one of the volunteers here." "Marcus Thompson." "Well, Marcus Thompson, you have an extraordinary gift." As Sarah returned to her desk, she couldn't stop thinking about the young man and his music. She'd grown up in a musical family. Her father was a session musician who'd played with some of Nashville's biggest stars, and she recognized real talent when she heard it. More than that, she'd seen how Marcus's song had affected the other residents. In her experience, anything that could bring peace to people in such desperate circumstances was nothing short of miraculous. Unknown to anyone in the shelter, Sarah wasn't the only one who had been moved by Marcus's impromptu performance. Betty Rodriguez, The night coordinator had discreetly recorded a short video on her phone. She'd been at the shelter for over a decade and had never seen anything quite like the effect Marcus's music had on the room. After her shift ended, Betty sat in her car in the parking lot, watching the video again. The quality wasn't great, the lighting was poor and the sound was muffled. But there was something undeniably powerful about what she'd captured. On impulse, she posted it to her Facebook page with a simple caption. Sometimes angels show up in the most unexpected places. This young man brought hope to our shelter tonight with his beautiful music. Betty had only about 200 Facebook friends, mostly family members and fellow social workers. She never expected the video to travel beyond that small circle. But social media has a way of amplifying moments of genuine human connection, and by morning, her post had been shared dozens of times. Marcus woke to the sound of breakfast preparations and the gentle hum of morning conversations. The events of the previous night felt almost dreamlike, but the grateful smiles from his fellow residents confirmed that his musical moment had been real. Dorothy Jackson approached him as he folded his blanket. "Sleep well, music man?" she asked with a grin. "Better than I have in weeks," Marcus admitted, and he meant it. For the first time since losing his apartment, he'd slept without the constant anxiety that had become his companion. "You should play more often," Dorothy suggested. "Music feeds the soul, and Lord knows we could all use some soul food around here." Betty Rodriguez was preparing to end her shift when she checked her phone. Her eyes widened as she saw the notifications flooding her screen. The video of Marcus had been shared over 300 times overnight, with comments pouring in from people who had been moved by the brief clip. "Oh my," she whispered, scrolling through the responses. People were asking about the young man, wanting to know how they could help, sharing their own stories of hardship and the power of music to heal. Sarah Mitchell arrived for her morning volunteer shift just as Betty was gathering her things. The two women had worked together many times, and Sarah immediately noticed Betty's excited expression. "You look like you have news," Sarah said. "Do I ever?" Betty replied, showing Sarah her phone. "Remember that young man who sang last night? Well, this little video I took has gone a bit viral." Sarah watched the clip, feeling the same emotional impact she'd experienced in person. "This is incredible, Betty. Has Marcus seen this?" "Not yet. I wasn't sure if I should show him. Some people don't like being filmed without permission." Sarah considered this. "Why don't I talk to him? I spent a few minutes with him last night, and he seemed like a thoughtful person. He might appreciate knowing that his music touched so many people." Marcus was finishing his breakfast, oatmeal and coffee that tasted like heaven after so many days of uncertainty about his next meal, when Sarah approached his table. "Good morning," she said, sitting across from him. "How are you feeling today?" "Different," Marcus said honestly. "Better, I think. Last night, it reminded me why I love music in the first place." Sarah smiled. "I wanted to talk to you about that. Betty recorded a short video of your performance, and she posted it on social media. It's been shared hundreds of times, and people are really responding to it." Marcus's expression grew concerned. "I don't know if I'm comfortable with that. I mean, everyone here deserves their privacy." "That's exactly why I wanted to talk to you before showing you," Sarah said. "The video doesn't show anyone else clearly. It's mostly focused on you and your guitar. But I understand if you'd prefer she take it down. Can I see it first?" Sarah pulled up the video on her phone and handed it to Marcus. As he watched, his expression shifted from concern to amazement. The comments were overwhelmingly positive, with people sharing their own struggles and thanking him for the moment of beauty he'd created. "I had no idea," Marcus said softly. I was just trying to help that woman who was crying." "And you did help her. And apparently, you've helped a lot of other people too." Sarah hesitated, then continued. "Marcus, I don't want to overstep, but I've been working with homeless populations for 3 years, and I've never seen anything like what happened last night. You have something special." Marcus handed the phone back, his mind racing. "I appreciate that, but I don't see how it changes anything. I'm still sleeping in a shelter, still broke, still basically invisible to the music industry." "Maybe," Sarah said, "but sometimes opportunities come from the most unexpected places." As if summoned by her words, Betty Rodriguez appeared at their table, her face flushed with excitement. "Marcus, honey, you need to see something," she said, practically vibrating with energy. "The video, it's been shared over 1,000 times now, and some big names are starting to notice." She showed them her phone, where the notifications were coming so fast they could barely read them. Musicians, music bloggers, and even some verified accounts from Nashville industry professionals were sharing and commenting on the video. "Look at this one," Betty said, pointing to a comment. "That's from Jake Morrison. He's a producer who's worked with some of the biggest names in country music. He says, and I quote, 'This kid has the real thing. Someone needs to find him.'" Marcus felt his heart rate accelerate. This kind of attention was exactly what he'd been hoping for during all those months of playing on street corners and in dive bars. But now that it was happening, he felt overwhelmed and unprepared. "There's more," Betty continued. "A reporter from the Tennessean wants to do a story about you. And someone from GAC, you know, Great American Country, reached out asking if they could feature the video on their show." Sarah watched Marcus's face carefully. She could see the conflict there, hope warring with fear, excitement tempered by disbelief. "This is a lot to process," Marcus said finally. "Yesterday, I was just trying to stay warm. And now..." "Now you have choices," Sarah said gently. "And whatever you decide, you don't have to decide alone." Marcus looked at her, struck by the kindness in her voice. In his experience, most people made offers of help that evaporated when things got complicated. But something about Sarah seemed different, more solid, more genuine. "Why are you being so nice to me?" he asked. Sarah considered the question seriously. "Because I recognize something in you that I've seen in the best musicians I've grown up around. Talent is common in Nashville. The city is full of incredibly gifted people. But authenticity, that's rare. What you did last night wasn't a performance. It was just you, sharing your gift to comfort people who needed it. That's the kind of person the world needs more of." Betty's phone rang, interrupting the moment. She glanced at the caller ID and gasped. "I don't believe it," she whispered. This can't be real." "What is it?" Sarah asked. "The caller ID says Garth Brooks Management," Betty said, her voice barely audible. Should I answer it?" Marcus felt the world tilt slightly. Garth Brooks was his musical hero, the artist who had inspired him to pick up a guitar in the first place. The idea that someone from Garth's team might be calling about him seemed impossible. "Answer it," Sarah urged. Betty took a deep breath and swiped to accept the call. "Hello?" The conversation was brief, and Betty's expressions ranged from disbelief to excitement, to something approaching shock. When she hung up, she stared at Marcus as if seeing him for the first time. "That was Rachel Stevens, Garth Brooks's personal assistant," Betty said slowly. "She said Garth saw the video this morning, and he wants to meet you." The shelter's common room fell silent. Other residents who had been minding their own business were now openly listening, and several staff members had gathered around. "Meet me?" Marcus repeated. "Are you sure they had the right person?" She knew your name, knew about the shelter, knew about the song you sang last night, Betty confirmed. She said Garth was so moved by the video that he wants to come here this afternoon to talk with you personally. Marcus felt his knees go weak. Sarah must have noticed, because she quickly guided him to a chair. "Breathe," she said softly. "Just breathe." "This isn't real," Marcus said. "Things like this don't happen to people like me." "People like you?" Dorothy Jackson had joined the group and was looking at Marcus with fierce intensity. "Honey, you think being homeless means you don't deserve good things? You think being down on your luck means you can't catch a break?" Marcus looked around the room at the faces surrounding him. Betty, Sarah, Dorothy, Bobby, and several other residents and volunteers. These were people who understood struggle, who knew what it meant to feel forgotten by the world, and every single one of them was looking at him with hope and encouragement. "Maybe Dorothy's right," Sarah said. "Maybe you've been thinking about this all wrong. You're not people like you. You're Marcus Thompson, a talented musician who used his gift to bring comfort to others in their darkest hour. That's exactly the kind of person who deserves a miracle." The afternoon hours crawled by like years. Word had spread throughout the shelter that Garth Brooks himself was coming to visit, and the excitement was palpable. Marcus had tried to nap, tried to eat lunch, tried to practice guitar, but nothing could calm his nerves. Sarah had stayed at the shelter long past her usual volunteer hours, claiming she wanted to help with the media attention that was sure to follow. But truthfully, she was fascinated by Marcus and wanted to be there for whatever was about to happen. "You should change clothes," she suggested gently. Marcus was wearing the same jeans and flannel shirt he'd slept in. "These are the nicest clothes I have," Marcus admitted. Sarah thought for a moment. "What size are you?" "Medium shirt, 32 waist." "I'll be right back," Sarah said, heading for the door. She returned 20 minutes later with a shopping bag from a nearby department store. Inside was a simple but nice button-down shirt, a pair of dark jeans, and a belt. "Sarah, I can't accept this," Marcus protested. "You're not accepting charity," she said firmly. "You're accepting support from a friend. There's a difference." The word friend hung in the air between them, carrying more weight than such a simple word should. Marcus looked into Sarah's eyes and saw something that made his chest tighten. Not pity, not professional concern, but genuine caring. "Thank you," he said quietly. While Marcus changed in the shelter's bathroom, Sarah found herself questioning her own motivations. She'd worked with hundreds of homeless individuals, and while she cared about all of them, she'd never bought anyone clothes or spent her day off waiting around for a miracle. There was something about Marcus that had gotten under her skin in the best possible way. Betty Rodriguez was handling the growing media attention with remarkable grace. 3 news crews had arrived, along with reporters from music blogs and a photographer from the Tennessean. She'd agreed to allow limited coverage of Garth's visit, with the understanding that the focus would remain on Marcus and his music, not on exploiting the other shelter residents. At 3:47 p.m., a black SUV pulled up outside the Mercy House shelter. Through the windows, Marcus could see several figures getting out, but it wasn't until a familiar silhouette appeared in the doorway that the reality of the situation hit him. Garth Brooks walked into the shelter like he owned the place, but not in an arrogant way. He moved with the confidence of someone who was comfortable anywhere, equally at home on a stadium stage or in a homeless shelter. He was dressed simply, jeans, boots, and a plain black t-shirt, but his presence filled the room. "Where's Marcus?" he asked Betty, his Oklahoma accent immediately recognizable. Marcus stood on shaking legs, still unable to fully believe what was happening. Garth's eyes found him across the room, and a genuine smile spread across the country superstar's face. "There he is," Garth said, walking directly to Marcus with his hand extended. "Son, I'm Garth Brooks, and I am so damn pleased to meet you." Marcus shook the offered hand, his voice failing him completely. "I watched that video about 50 times this morning," Garth continued, "and every single time, it gave me chills. You've got something special, Marcus, something that can't be taught or manufactured." "Thank you, sir," Marcus finally managed. "Your music, it saved my life more than once." Garth's expression grew serious. "Well, from what I saw in that video, you're returning the favor for a lot of other people. That's what real music does. It connects us, reminds us we're not alone." The room was completely silent, except for the soft whir of news cameras. Every resident, volunteer, and reporter was hanging on every word. "I understand you've been having some tough times," Garth said. Marcus nodded, not trusting his voice. "Well, I've been thinking about that all day, and I've got a proposition for you," Garth continued. "I'm starting a new tour in 3 weeks, 47 cities over 6 months. I need good musicians, people who understand that music is about more than entertainment. It's about healing, about bringing people together." Marcus felt dizzy. Are you offering me a job?" "I'm offering you a chance," Garth corrected. "A chance to travel with my band, to learn from some of the best musicians in the business, and to share your gift with audiences across the country. We'll start you as a backup guitarist and vocalist, and we'll see where it goes from there." The shelter erupted in cheers and applause. Dorothy Jackson was crying openly, and Bobby Williams was whooping like they'd won the lottery. Even some of the hardened news reporters were smiling. "But here's the thing," Garth continued, raising his hand to quiet the celebration. "This isn't charity. You'll earn every penny, and it's going to be hard work. Long days, constant travel, pressure like you've never experienced. Are you up for that?" Marcus looked around the room at the faces of people who had become his temporary family. These were individuals who understood struggle, who knew what it meant to get a second chance. Their encouraging nods gave him strength. "Yes, sir," Marcus said firmly. "I'm ready to work harder than I've ever worked in my life." "Good answer," Garth said, extending his hand again. "Welcome to the team, Marcus Thompson." As they shook hands, cameras flashed, and the room exploded with applause again. But Marcus was only aware of one thing: the solid, calloused hand of his musical hero, pulling him back from the brink of despair. Sarah Mitchell watched from across the room, her heart swelling with an emotion she couldn't quite name. Pride, certainly, and happiness for Marcus. But there was something else, something that felt suspiciously like fear. Marcus was about to embark on an adventure that would take him far from Nashville, far from the shelter, and far from her. The next 3 weeks passed in a whirlwind of preparation and adjustment. Garth's team had arranged for Marcus to stay in a modest hotel while he got ready for the tour, a luxury that felt almost overwhelming after months on the streets. But even more overwhelming was the intensive musical preparation required. Sarah found reasons to visit Marcus almost daily, officially to help him navigate the social services needed to establish temporary housing and employment documentation. Unofficially, she was discovering that her feelings for the young musician were deepening in ways that both thrilled and terrified her. "You don't have to do all this," Marcus told her one afternoon as she helped him shop for tour-appropriate clothing. "I know you have your own work, your own life." "Maybe I want to do this," Sarah replied, then immediately felt exposed by her honesty. They were in a department store, and Marcus had just tried on his first real stage outfit. black jeans, boots, and a crisp white shirt that made his dark hair and eyes look even more striking. Sarah felt her breath catch. "You look like a real country star," she said softly. "I don't feel like one," Marcus admitted. "Half the time I wake up thinking this is all a dream." "The other half?" Marcus considered this. "The other half? I'm terrified I'm going to mess it up somehow." Sarah stepped closer, adjusting his collar with an intimacy that surprised them both. "Marcus, you didn't get this opportunity because Garth felt sorry for you. You got it because you have genuine talent and an authentic heart. Those are the two things that matter most in music." Their eyes met in the department store mirror, and for a moment, the rest of the world faded away. Marcus turned to face her directly, his hand coming up to cover hers where it rested on his chest. "Sarah," he began, but she stepped back, suddenly aware of how close they'd become. "We should get you checked out," she said quickly. "You have rehearsal in an hour." The rehearsals were intensive and intimidating. Garth's band was composed of Nashville's finest session musicians, men and women who had played on countless hit records and knew their instruments better than most people knew their own names. Marcus felt like a freshman trying to keep up with graduate students. But Garth himself was an encouraging presence, patient with Marcus's learning curve and generous with advice. "Every musician in this room started somewhere," he reminded Marcus during a break. "The difference between the ones who make it and the ones who don't isn't talent. It's persistence and willingness to learn." The lead guitarist, James "Jimmy" Patterson, was particularly helpful. A veteran of 3 decades in country music, Jimmy took Marcus under his wing, teaching him not just the musical arrangements, but the professional habits that would serve him well on tour. "This business will chew you up and spit you out if you let it," Jimmy warned during one late-night practice session. "But if you stay grounded, remember why you started playing in the first place, you can have a hell of a career." "How do you stay grounded?" Marcus asked. Jimmy smiled. "For me, it's family. Got a wife and 2 kids back home. They remind me that I'm just Jimmy, not some hotshot musician. For you, well, you'll figure out what keeps you centered." As Marcus spoke with Jimmy, his thoughts immediately went to Sarah. In the chaos of preparation and excitement, she had become his anchor, the person who reminded him of who he was beneath all the industry buzz. The night before the tour began, Sarah took Marcus to dinner at a quiet restaurant in Music Row. It wasn't officially a date. They'd been careful not to define their relationship, but it felt significant nonetheless. "Are you nervous?" she asked over dessert. "Terrified," Marcus admitted, "but excited too. 6 months ago, I was sleeping in my car. Now I'm about to tour with Garth Brooks. It doesn't seem real." "It's real," Sarah said firmly, "and you deserve every bit of it." Marcus reached across the table and took her hand. "I couldn't have gotten here without you. The clothes, the encouragement, just believing in me when I couldn't believe in myself." Sarah felt tears threatening. "Marcus, I know this is complicated," he continued. "The tour, the distance, the fact that my life is about to change completely. But I need you to know that meeting you has been just as important as meeting Garth. Maybe more important." Sarah squeezed his hand. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that I don't want this to end when I get on that tour bus tomorrow. I'm saying that I think I'm falling in love with you, and I hope that doesn't scare you away." The words hung in the air between them, honest and vulnerable. Sarah felt her heart racing, torn between the joy of hearing those words and the fear of what they meant. "It terrifies me," she said finally, "but not because I don't feel the same way. Because I do. And that means I'm going to spend the next 6 months worrying about you missing you, and probably falling even deeper in love with you. Marcus brought her hand to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. Then, we'll figure it out together. Technology exists. We can video chat, text, call. And the tour has breaks, times when I can come back to Nashville. Promise me something, Sarah said. Anything. Promise me that no matter how big this gets, no matter how many people start telling you how amazing you are, you'll remember who you really are. You'll remember the man who sang to comfort strangers in a homeless shelter. I promise, Marcus said solemnly, and I promise that no matter where this career takes me, I'll always come back to you. The tour bus was a revelation, a rolling home complete with bunks, a kitchenette, and enough space for 8 musicians to coexist during long drives between cities. Marcus had been assigned a bottom bunk near the back, and he spent the first few hours of their initial drive just marveling at the efficiency of it all. Their first show was in Oklahoma City, a homecoming of sorts for Garth. The venue was a 15,000-seat arena, and Marcus felt his stomach drop when he saw the massive stage during sound check. Different from the shelter, huh? Jimmy Patterson said, appearing beside him. Just a little, Marcus replied, his voice tight with nerves. Here's a secret, Jimmy said. It's exactly the same as the shelter. You're still just sharing music with people who need it. The only difference is the number of people and the fancy lights. That evening, as Marcus stood in the wings watching Garth command the stage with effortless charisma, he tried to internalize Jimmy's advice. The crowd of 15,000 was on its feet, singing along to every word, and the energy was electric. You ready for this? Garth asked, appearing beside Marcus during a brief instrumental break. As ready as I'll ever be, Marcus replied. Good. Remember, they're not here to judge you. They're here to have a good time. Just help me give that to them. When Garth introduced him to the crowd, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our newest band member, Marcus Thompson. The applause was warm and welcoming. Marcus stepped into the lights, his guitar ready, and felt something click into place. The next 2 hours passed in a blur of music and adrenaline. Marcus played backup guitar, sang harmonies, and even got a brief solo spotlight during one of Garth's signature songs. By the end of the show, he was exhausted, exhilarated, and completely addicted to the feeling. How was that? Garth asked as they walked off stage. Incredible, Marcus breathed. Absolutely incredible. Good, because we've got 46 more shows to go. Back in his hotel room later that night, Marcus video called Sarah. It was past midnight in Nashville, but she answered on the second ring, her face sleepy but smiling on the screen. How did it go? She asked immediately. Better than I could have imagined, Marcus said, and spent the next 30 minutes describing every detail of the experience. Sarah listened with the kind of attention that made him feel like the most important person in the world. I'm so proud of you, she said when he finished. I wish I could have been there. Me too. But Sarah, seeing all those people, feeling that energy, it made me think about what you said about remembering who I am. Tonight wasn't about me being some big star. It was about being part of something that brings people joy. Sarah smiled. And that's exactly why you're going to be amazing at this. The tour developed its own rhythm over the following weeks. Days were spent traveling, with Marcus using the time to write songs, practice guitar, and learn from his fellow musicians. The band members, initially cautious around the newcomer, gradually accepted him as one of their own, as his skills and work ethic proved themselves night after night. Evenings were for performing, and Marcus discovered that each show brought its own unique energy. Some crowds were wild and participatory, others more reserved but deeply attentive. He learned to read audiences, to adjust his performance to match their mood, to become part of the collective experience that made live music so powerful. But the most meaningful moments often came after the shows, when fans would approach the band at meet and greets or stage doors. Marcus was amazed by the stories people shared, how music had helped them through divorces, deaths, job losses, and other struggles. It reminded him daily of the shelter, of the power music had to heal and connect. 3 weeks into the tour, they were playing in Denver when something unexpected happened. During one of Marcus's solo moments, a young woman in the front row held up a sign that read, "Thank you for the Shelter video. You saved my life." Marcus nearly missed his cue. So moved was he by the message. After the show, he sought out the fan, a college student named Jennifer Walsh, who explained that she'd been going through a severe depression when she saw the viral video of his Shelter performance. "I was in a really dark place," Jennifer explained, "but seeing you turn your own pain into something beautiful for other people, it made me realize that I could do the same thing, that I could find ways to help others instead of just focusing on my own problems." Marcus was speechless. He'd known intellectually that the video had touched people, but hearing a specific story of how his music had literally saved someone's life was overwhelming. "What did you do?" he managed to ask. "I started volunteering at a crisis hotline," Jennifer said. "Turns out I'm pretty good at listening to people and helping them find hope. I'm majoring in psychology now, hoping to become a counselor." That night, Marcus called Sarah with tears in his eyes, sharing Jennifer's story and trying to process the weight of responsibility he felt. "Do you remember what I told you that first morning at the shelter?" Sarah asked. "That authenticity is rare. This is what I meant. Your music doesn't just entertain, it changes lives. That's not a burden, Marcus. That's a gift." As the tour progressed, Marcus found himself growing not just as a musician, but as a performer and as a person. Garth was a master teacher, showing by example how to balance professional excellence with genuine humility. The other band members shared their own wisdom, teaching Marcus about everything from stage presence to financial planning. But it was the nightly phone calls with Sarah that kept him grounded. She became his confessor, his cheerleader, and his anchor to the person he'd been before the lights and crowds and industry attention. "I miss you," became their standard greeting, no matter who called whom. "I miss you too," was always the response. 2 months into the tour, during a 3-day break in Nashville, Marcus surprised Sarah by showing up at the Mercy House shelter. She was working her regular volunteer shift when she looked up to see him standing in the doorway, guitar case in hand, and a nervous smile on his face. "I hope it's okay," he said. "I wanted to come back, to see everyone, to play again if that's all right." The shelter residents were thrilled to see him. Dorothy Jackson hugged him so tightly he could barely breathe, and Bobby Williams kept shaking his hand and saying, "Look at you, man. Look at you. You haven't forgotten where you came from," Betty Rodriguez said approvingly. "That's good. That's important." That evening, Marcus played an impromptu concert in the shelter's common room. But this time, it wasn't just about comforting people in despair. Many of the residents had seen him on television, had followed his story in the media, and his presence gave them something equally valuable: hope. "If Marcus can make it," one resident told Sarah, "maybe there's a chance for the rest of us too." After the informal concert, Marcus and Sarah walked through downtown Nashville, talking about everything and nothing. The familiar streets felt different to Marcus now. He recognized the buildings and landmarks, but his perspective had shifted. He was no longer the desperate young man who'd wandered these sidewalks looking for shelter. He was someone with purpose, with a future, with choices, "Are you happy?" Sarah asked as they sat on a bench overlooking the Cumberland River. Marcus considered the question seriously. "Most of the time, yes. The music is incredible. The band is great. Garth is everything I hoped he'd be as a person. But the best parts of my days are when I get to talk to you. When I'm on stage, I find myself thinking about how I'll describe the experience to you later. When something funny happens on the bus, I make mental notes so I can tell you about it. You're not just someone I'm dating long distance. You're woven into every part of my life now." Sarah felt her heart flutter. "Marcus, I know it's crazy," he continued. "I know we've only known each other for a few months, and most of that time I've been on the road. But I can't imagine my life without you in it." Sarah took his hand, intertwining their fingers. "It's not crazy, or if it is, then I'm crazy too, because I feel exactly the same way." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the lights of Nashville reflect on the water. Both were thinking about the future, about the challenges of building a relationship under such unusual circumstances, about the dreams they were individually pursuing, and whether those dreams could merge into something shared. "There's something I need to tell you," Marcus said finally. Sarah's stomach tightened. "What is it?" "Garth pulled me aside yesterday. He wants to extend my contract beyond this tour. There's talk of me opening for some of his shows, maybe even recording an album. It would mean more touring, more time away from Nashville." Sarah felt a mixture of pride and fear. "Marcus, that's incredible. That's everything you've dreamed of." "Is it?" Marcus asked. "Because lately, my dreams have been changing. Success used to mean making it big, getting record deals, playing sold-out shows, and I still want those things, but not if they mean losing what we have." Sarah turned to face him fully. "You're not going to lose me because you're successful. If anything, seeing you chase your dreams makes me love you more." The word hung between them. Love. They danced around it, implied it, felt it. But this was the first time either had said it directly. "I love you too," Marcus said softly. "More than I knew was possible." Their kiss was tender and full of promise, a seal on feelings that had been building since that first night in the shelter. The second half of the tour brought new challenges and opportunities. Marcus's confidence had grown considerably, and Garth began featuring him more prominently in the shows. He was given longer solo segments, invited to sing lead vocals on covers of classic country songs, and even encouraged to perform one of his original compositions. The original song was called "Second Chances," inspired by his experience at the shelter and the kindness of people like Sarah, Betty, and Dorothy. The first time he performed it, in front of 20,000 people in Chicago, the response was overwhelming. The crowd gave him a standing ovation, and several people in the front rows were visibly crying. "That song is going to be a hit," Garth told him afterward. "We need to get you in a recording studio as soon as this tour is over." The media attention around Marcus continued to grow. Music journalists began writing profiles about the homeless shelter discovery, and his social media following exploded. With fame came scrutiny, and Marcus learned to navigate interviews where reporters wanted to focus more on his backstory than his music. "It's a balancing act," Jimmy Patterson advised. "Your story is part of what makes you interesting, but you don't want to become defined by it. You're not just the guy who was homeless. You're a talented musician who happened to experience homelessness." Sarah watched Marcus's growing fame with a mixture of pride and concern. She was thrilled to see him succeeding, but she also saw how the constant attention was affecting him. He was more tired during their phone calls, sometimes distracted by the demands of his new life. "Are you taking care of yourself?" she asked during one late-night conversation. "I'm trying," Marcus said, and she could hear the exhaustion in his voice. "But it's a lot, Sarah. Everyone wants something. Interviews, photos, meetings about recording contracts. Sometimes I feel like I'm losing myself in all of it. Do you want to slow down?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "No, I don't think I do. This is what I've worked for my whole life. But I want to make sure I don't lose the things that matter most in the process." "Like what?" "Like you. Like remembering why I started playing music in the first place. Like staying connected to people who are struggling the way I was." Sarah felt a surge of love for him. Despite all the changes in his life, Marcus was still the same person who had comforted strangers in a homeless shelter. "You won't lose those things," she assured him. "Not if you don't want to." Their relationship was tested when a gossip blog published photos of Marcus having dinner with Jessica Ryan, a young country singer who had opened for several shows on the tour. The photos were innocent, just two musicians eating together. But the accompanying article speculated about a romantic relationship. Sarah saw the article before Marcus did, and the jealousy that hit her was unexpected and intense. She knew logically that Marcus was faithful, that their relationship was strong. But seeing him with another woman, especially a beautiful, talented woman who shared his world, triggered insecurities she hadn't known she possessed. When Marcus called that night, she tried to act normal, but he immediately sensed something was wrong. "What's going on?" he asked. "Nothing," Sarah said, then immediately felt foolish for lying. "Actually, that's not true. I saw some photos online. You and that singer Jessica." Marcus sighed. "Sarah, there's nothing going on between Jessica and me. We're just friends, colleagues. She was having a rough night, got some bad news from home, and I took her out to cheer her up." "I know," Sarah said quietly. "I know you would never. It's just hard sometimes, being so far away, seeing you with people who understand your world in ways I never will." "Hey," Marcus said firmly, "look at me." Sarah turned her laptop screen toward herself, seeing Marcus's concerned face in the video call. "You are the most important person in my world," he said. "Not because you understand the music business, but because you understand me. You knew who I was before any of this happened, and that's not something I'm ever going to take for granted." "I'm sorry," Sarah said. "I don't want to be the jealous girlfriend who freaks out over innocent photos." "You're not freaking out. You're being human. This situation isn't normal. We're building a relationship while I'm traveling the country, surrounded by industry people and media attention. It would be weird if you didn't have moments of doubt." Their conversation that night lasted 3 hours, and by the end of it, their relationship felt stronger rather than threatened. They talked about boundaries, about communication, about the importance of honesty even when it revealed unflattering emotions like jealousy or insecurity. "I love that you told me how you felt instead of just acting weird and making me guess," Marcus said. "That's how this works. We tell each other the truth, even when it's uncomfortable." With 2 weeks left in the tour, Marcus received news that would change everything again. His performance of Second Chances had been professionally recorded during the Chicago show, and when Garth's team shared it with record executives, the response was immediate and overwhelming. 3 major labels wanted to sign him, each offering significant advances and promising extensive promotional support. The meetings were scheduled for the week after the tour ended, and Marcus would have to make a decision that would determine the trajectory of his career. "This is it," he told Sarah during their nightly call. "This is the moment I've been dreaming about since I was 8 years old. How do you feel about it?" "Excited, terrified, overwhelmed, all of the above." Marcus paused. I keep thinking about what you said that first morning at the shelter, about authenticity being rare. I want to make sure that whatever deal I sign, whatever direction my career takes, I don't lose that. You won't, Sarah said confidently, because authenticity isn't something you can lose. It's who you are. The final show of the tour was in Nashville, a homecoming concert at the Grand Ole Opry. For Marcus, performing on the same stage where his heroes had made history was surreal beyond description. Sarah was in the audience that night, along with Betty Rodriguez, Dorothy Jackson, and several other people from the shelter. Seeing their faces in the crowd, Marcus felt the same sense of purpose that had driven him to pick up his guitar that first night at Mercy House. During his solo performance of Second Chances, Marcus looked directly at Sarah and sang with all the emotion he'd been carrying for months. The song was about second chances, but it was also about love, about finding hope in unexpected places, about the people who believe in you when you can't believe in yourself. When the song ended, the Opry audience rose to their feet in a thunderous standing ovation. But Marcus only had eyes for Sarah, who was crying and clapping and looking at him with such love and pride that he felt his own eyes fill with tears. After the show, there was a celebration at a nearby restaurant. Garth made a speech about Marcus's incredible journey and bright future, and the entire band presented him with a custom guitar engraved with the dates of their tour together. "You came to us as a talented kid with potential," Garth said. "You're leaving us as a professional musician ready to take on the world. We're all proud to have been part of your story." Later that night, Marcus and Sarah walked through the same downtown Nashville streets where they'd shared their first kiss months earlier. Everything looked the same, but everything had changed. "So, what happens now?" Sarah asked. "Now I meet with record labels and try to figure out which opportunity will let me make the music I want to make while staying true to who I am," Marcus said. "And us? What happens with us?" Marcus stopped walking and took her hands in his. "That depends on what you want to happen." Sarah looked into his eyes, seeing the same kindness and depth that had attracted her that first night at the shelter, but also a new confidence and maturity that came from following his dreams. "I want to see where this goes," she said. "All of it. Your career, our relationship, everything. Even if it means more touring, more time apart, more craziness." "Especially then," Sarah said firmly, "because I've seen who you are when everything falls apart, and I've seen who you are when everything goes right. I love both versions of you, and I want to be there for whatever comes next." The record label meetings were unlike anything Marcus had ever experienced. He sat in gleaming conference rooms high above Music Row, listening to executives in expensive suits talk about marketing strategies, radio play, and projected sales figures. Each label had a different vision for his career, and each made promises that seemed almost too good to be true. Universal Music Group offered the largest advance, nearly $500,000, and promised to rush release an album within 6 months. They saw Marcus as a crossover artist who could appeal to both country and pop audiences. Sony Music Nashville took a more traditional approach, wanting to establish him firmly in the country market before expanding his reach. Their offer was smaller financially, but they promised more creative control and a longer-term development plan. The third option surprised him the most. It came from a smaller, independent label called Heartland Records, founded by veteran producer Tom Mitchell, who turned out to be Sarah's uncle, a connection she had never mentioned during all their conversations about the music industry. "Sarah never told you?" Tom asked when Marcus expressed surprise during their meeting. "She never said a word," Marcus replied. Tom smiled. "That's my niece. Ethical to a fault. She probably didn't want you to think she had an agenda or was trying to influence your decisions. Heartland's offer was the smallest financially, but Tom's passion for Marcus's music was evident from the first moment of their meeting. "I don't want to turn you into something you're not," Tom explained. "I heard your Shelter video. I've watched footage from the Garth tour, and I've listened to Second Chances about 50 times. You have something authentic, something that connects with people on a deep level. My job would be to amplify that authenticity, not manufacture a fake persona." "What would that look like practically?" Marcus asked. "It would mean taking time to write and record an album that truly represents who you are. It would mean building an audience organically, rather than trying to manufacture a hit. It would mean smaller advances and slower growth, but more artistic integrity and long-term sustainability." Marcus left the meeting with his head spinning. Each option had merit, and each would take his life in a completely different direction. That evening, he had dinner with Sarah at a quiet restaurant where they could talk without being recognized. He filled her in on all 3 meetings, carefully noting her reactions to each option. "What did you think when you found out Tom Mitchell was your uncle?" Marcus asked. Sarah looked embarrassed. "I was mortified that I'd never mentioned it, but honestly, I didn't want to complicate things. The music industry is full of people who use family connections, and I wanted your success to be entirely your own." "Did you know he was going to make me an offer?" "I suspected he might be interested, but we haven't talked about it. Uncle Tom and I have an unspoken agreement that we don't discuss his business decisions." Marcus reached across the table and took her hand. "I appreciate that. It means a lot that you kept that boundary. So, which offer are you leaning toward?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "I keep coming back to something Garth told me during the tour. He said the music industry will try to turn you into what they think will sell, but lasting success comes from being so authentically yourself that people can't ignore you." That sounds like Uncle Tom's approach. It does, but it also means turning down life-changing money, saying no to opportunities that might never come again. Sarah squeezed his hand. "Marcus, 6 months ago you were sleeping in a shelter. Any of these opportunities would change your life dramatically. The question isn't which one offers the most money, it's which one will let you sleep well at night 10 years from now." Her words crystallized something that had been nagging at Marcus throughout the day. The universal offer was tempting because of the financial security it represented, but their vision of him felt hollow. The Sony approach was more respectful of his artistry, but still felt like they were trying to fit him into an existing mold. Tom Mitchell's offer was the scariest, precisely because it offered the most freedom. And with freedom came responsibility. "I think I know what I want to do," Marcus said finally. "Yeah?" "Yeah. But first, I want to go back to the shelter." They drove to Mercy House that night, arriving just as the dinner shift was ending. Betty Rodriguez was surprised but delighted to see them, and word quickly spread through the shelter that Marcus was back. Within minutes, the common room was filled with residents, volunteers, and staff members. Marcus looked around at the faces, some familiar from his own stay, others new since he'd left, but all of them carried the same expression of cautious hope that he remembered from his own darkest days. "I wanted to come back here before making the biggest decision of my career," Marcus told the assembled group. "Because this place, all of you, remind me of what's really important." He pulled out his guitar and began to play Second Chances, the song that had grown from his experiences in this very room. As he sang, he saw the same effect his music had always had. People relaxing, connecting, finding comfort in shared experience. When the song ended, Dorothy Jackson spoke up from her usual spot in the front row. "You've got a gift, Marcus, and that gift belongs to the world now." But don't you forget that it started here, with people who needed hope. An elderly man Marcus didn't recognize raised his hand tentatively. "Are you really famous now?" Marcus smiled. "I don't know about famous, but I've been blessed with some opportunities. Will you still come back and visit us regular folks?" The question hit Marcus harder than he'd expected. In all his meetings with record executives, no one had talked about maintaining connections to communities like this. They'd focused on building his brand, expanding his reach, maximizing his commercial potential. But none of that meant anything if he lost touch with the experiences that had shaped his music. "I promise," Marcus said firmly, "no matter what happens with my career, I'll always come back here. This is where I learned what music is really for." Later that night, as they drove back to Sarah's apartment, Marcus felt a clarity he hadn't experienced since the tour ended. "I'm going to sign with your uncle," he announced. Sarah looked surprised. "Are you sure? You shouldn't choose him just because of me." "I'm not choosing him because of you," Marcus said. "I'm choosing him because his vision aligns with what I learned tonight at the shelter. Music isn't about getting rich or famous. It's about connecting with people, telling stories that matter, making people feel less alone. Uncle Tom will be thrilled, but he'll also hold you to incredibly high standards. He doesn't sign artists he doesn't believe in completely." "Good," Marcus said. "I want to be held to high standards. I want to make music that matters." Marcus signed with Heartland Records on a Tuesday morning in March, almost exactly 1 year after his first night at the Mercy House shelter. The contract was modest by industry standards, but it gave him something more valuable than money: complete creative control over his music. Tom Mitchell's approach to artist development was methodical and thoughtful. Instead of rushing Marcus into a recording studio, he arranged for him to spend time with some of Nashville's most respected songwriters, learning the craft of turning personal experiences into universal stories. "Songwriting is like architecture," explained Mary Catherine Walsh, a Grammy-winning writer who had penned hits for everyone from Keith Urban to Carrie Underwood. "You need a strong foundation, solid structure, and attention to detail. But most importantly, you need to know why you're building what you're building." Marcus threw himself into the work with the same intensity he'd brought to learning Garth's catalog during the tour. He wrote constantly, in coffee shops, in his small Nashville apartment, during long walks through the city's neighborhoods. Some songs were about his experiences with homelessness, others about falling in love with Sarah, still others about the surreal experience of going from nobody to somebody in the span of a few months. Sarah, meanwhile, had made a decision of her own. She left her position at the nonprofit where she'd been working and took a job as a program coordinator at the Mercy House shelter. The move meant a pay cut, but it also meant doing work that felt directly meaningful rather than just professionally satisfying. "Are you sure about this?" Marcus asked when she told him about the job change. "I don't want you to feel like you have to restructure your life around my career." "I'm not," Sarah assured him. "I'm restructuring my life around my values. Working at the shelter that night when you performed, it reminded me why I went into social work in the first place. This isn't about you. It's about me finding work that feeds my soul." But privately, Sarah knew that Marcus's example had influenced her decision. Watching him choose artistic integrity over financial security had inspired her to make her own choice, based on purpose rather than prestige. Their relationship had settled into a comfortable rhythm. Marcus was based in Nashville now, working on his album during the day and coming home to Sarah most evenings. They cooked dinner together, watched movies, talked about their respective work challenges, and slowly built the kind of domestic intimacy that had been impossible during the tour. "This feels normal," Sarah said one evening as they sat on her couch, Marcus working on song lyrics while she reviewed case files from the shelter. "Good normal or boring normal?" Marcus asked, looking up from his notebook. "The best kind of normal," Sarah replied. "The kind where I don't have to wonder where you are or whether I'll get to talk to you today." Marcus set aside his guitar and moved closer to her on the couch. "I was thinking about that earlier, actually. How much I love having this routine with you, knowing I get to come home to you every night." "Just every night," Sarah teased. "Well, I was hoping for every night for the rest of our lives, but I didn't want to presume," Marcus said, his tone suddenly serious. Sarah looked up from her files, meeting his eyes. "Marcus Thompson, are you proposing to me while I'm doing paperwork on your couch?" "Not officially," Marcus said quickly. "I mean, when I officially propose, it'll be more romantic than this. But I am saying that I can't imagine my future without you in it. All of it. The music, the success, whatever challenges come up. None of it means anything if I can't share it with you." Sarah set her work aside and turned to face him fully. "I feel the same way. But are you sure? Your life is about to change in ways we can't even imagine. You'll have opportunities to travel, to meet people, to experience things most people never get to experience. I don't want you to feel tied down." Marcus took her hands in his. "Sarah, you don't tie me down. You lift me up. You make me want to be better, work harder, dream bigger. Whatever success I achieve, it'll be more meaningful because I get to share it with someone who knew me before any of it happened." They held each other on the couch that night, not officially engaged, but committed in a way that felt deeper than any ceremony or legal document. They were building something together, not just a relationship, but a life based on shared values and mutual support. Marcus's album, titled From the Ground Up, took 8 months to complete. Every song was carefully crafted, with arrangements that served the lyrics rather than overshadowing them. Tom Mitchell brought in top-tier musicians, but the focus remained on Marcus's voice and the stories he was telling. The lead single, Second Chances, was released in October, almost exactly 18 months after the viral Shelter video. The song's reception exceeded everyone's expectations. It climbed to number 15 on the country charts and crossed over to adult contemporary radio. More importantly, it resonated with listeners in the same way Marcus's Shelter performance had, generating thousands of comments and messages from people sharing their own stories of redemption and hope. "This is what I was hoping for," Tom Mitchell told Marcus as they watched the song's chart progress. "Not just commercial success, but cultural impact. You're not just entertaining people, you're inspiring them." The album's release was scheduled for February, with a modest tour to follow. Unlike the massive arena shows Marcus had played with Garth, this tour would focus on smaller venues, theaters, clubs, and outdoor festivals where the connection between artist and audience could be more intimate. "I want people to feel like they're hearing these songs in their living room," Marcus explained to a journalist. "The message gets lost when there's too much distance between the stage and the seats." 2 weeks before the album release, Marcus surprised Sarah with a weekend trip to the mountains of East Tennessee. They rented a cabin overlooking a valley that stretched for miles, with nothing but forests and sky as far as they could see. "This is gorgeous," Sarah said, as they stood on the cabin's deck, watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of gold and purple. "It reminded me of something you said once," Marcus replied, "about how the best things in life are the ones that make you feel small and grateful at the same time." They spent the weekend hiking, cooking together, and talking about their dreams for the future. On their last morning, Marcus woke early and sat on the deck with his guitar, working on a new song while Sarah slept. The melody had been in his head for weeks, but the words finally came to him as he watched the morning mist rise from the valley below. It was a song about finding home in another person, about love that grows stronger through shared challenges, about building something lasting in a world that often feels temporary. When Sarah joined him on the deck with 2 cups of coffee, Marcus played the song for her. It was called Home in You, and by the time he finished the last verse, they were both crying. Is that about us?" Sarah asked. "It's about us, about the shelter, about everyone who's ever found family in unexpected places," Marcus said. "But mostly, it's about how you became home for me when I didn't have anywhere else to go." Sarah set down her coffee and moved to sit beside him on the deck chair. "I love you, Marcus Thompson, not because you're becoming famous, not because you write beautiful songs, but because you have the kindest heart of anyone I've ever known." "I love you too," Marcus replied. "And Sarah?" "Yeah?" "I know I said I wasn't officially proposing on your couch that night, but I'm officially proposing right now, in this beautiful place, with this song I wrote for you." Sarah's eyes widened as Marcus set aside his guitar and pulled a simple but elegant ring from his pocket. "Sarah Mitchell, will you marry me?" "Yes," Sarah said without hesitation. "Yes, absolutely yes." As Marcus slipped the ring onto her finger, they could hear the sounds of the morning. Birds singing, wind in the trees, the distant sound of a stream running through the valley below. It was peaceful and perfect, a moment of pure happiness before the whirlwind of Marcus's career pulled them back into the wider world. From the Ground Up debuted at number 3 on the country albums chart and number 12 on the Billboard 200. The critical reception was overwhelmingly positive, with reviewers praising Marcus's authentic storytelling and emotional honesty. Rolling Stone called it a masterclass in turning personal struggle into universal art, while Country Living described it as the most promising debut album in years. But the response that meant the most to Marcus came from an unexpected source. 3 days after the album's release, he received a handwritten letter from a man named David Harrison in Detroit. "Dear Marcus," the letter began, "I heard your song Second Chances on the radio last week while I was sitting in my car outside a homeless shelter trying to work up the courage to go inside. I'd been sleeping in that car for 2 weeks, too proud to ask for help. Your song reminded me that there's no shame in needing help, only in refusing it when it's offered. I walked into that shelter, got connected with social services, and start a new job next Monday. Thank you for helping me find my way home." Marcus read the letter to Sarah over breakfast, his voice breaking slightly on the last sentence. "This is why you make music," Sarah said softly. "For people like David, people like you were 18 months ago." The tour that followed was unlike anything Marcus had experienced, even during his time with Garth Brooks. These were his songs, his stories, his connection with the audience. Night after night, he watched people sing along to lyrics that had come from his deepest experiences, and he felt the same sense of purpose that had driven him to perform at the shelter that first night. Sarah joined him for several tour dates, particularly the ones that took them to cities with significant homeless populations. Together, they made it a practice to visit local shelters, not for publicity, but because it kept them grounded in the experiences that had brought them together. In Chicago, they visited a shelter where Marcus played an impromptu concert, and Sarah helped serve dinner. In Austin, they donated proceeds from Marcus's show to a local organization that provided job training for homeless individuals. In Denver, they met with Jennifer Walsh, the young woman who had credited Marcus's shelter video with saving her life. She was now a graduate student in psychology and had started a nonprofit that used music therapy to help people struggling with depression and anxiety. "You started something," Jennifer told Marcus during their reunion. "Not just with your music, but with your example. There are people all over the country using their talents to help others because they saw what you did." 6 months into the tour, Marcus received a call that would bring his journey full circle. Garth Brooks was planning a special concert at the Grand Ole Opry to benefit homeless shelters across the South, and he wanted Marcus to be his special guest. "I'd be honored," Marcus told Garth without hesitation. "Good," Garth replied, "because I've got another proposition for you, too. I'm putting together an all-star album to raise money for homelessness prevention programs. I want you to write and perform the title track." Titu. The benefit concert was scheduled for a Saturday night in May, almost exactly 2 years after Marcus's first night at the Mercy House shelter. The week leading up to the show was a whirlwind of rehearsals, interviews, and preparation, but Marcus found himself remarkably calm. "Nervous?" Sarah asked as they drove to the Opry that evening. "Excited," Marcus corrected. "This feels like completion somehow, like everything that's happened was leading to this moment." The Opry was sold out, with an audience that included music industry executives, celebrities, and, most importantly to Marcus, representatives from homeless shelters across the region. Betty Rodriguez was there, along with Dorothy Jackson, Bobby Williams, and several other people from Mercy House. Tom Mitchell sat with Sarah's parents, beaming with pride at his artist's success. When Garth introduced Marcus to the packed auditorium, the standing ovation lasted for nearly 2 minutes. Marcus looked out at the sea of faces, remembering the first time he'd played this stage during the tour, feeling overwhelmed by the journey that had brought him back here. "2 years ago," Marcus said when the applause finally died down, "I was sleeping in a homeless shelter, convinced that my dreams were over. I learned that night that sometimes our dreams don't come true the way we expect. Sometimes they come true in ways that are bigger and more meaningful than we ever imagined." He launched into Second Chances, and by the chorus, the entire audience was singing along. But it was the second song, Home in You, that brought the house down. As he sang about finding love and purpose in unexpected places, the cameras caught Sarah in the audience, tears streaming down her face as she mouthed the words along with him. The evening raised over $2 million for homelessness prevention programs. But for Marcus, the most meaningful moment came after the show. He was signing autographs and taking pictures when a teenage girl approached him nervously. "Mr. Thompson," she said quietly, "I'm staying at the Mercy House right now, and Miss Betty brought me here tonight. I just wanted to say thank you for showing me that things can get better." Marcus knelt down to her eye level. "What's your name?" Emma Rodriguez. I'm Betty's niece." "Well, Emma Rodriguez, let me tell you something that someone once told me. You're not defined by your circumstances. You're defined by how you respond to them. And if you keep believing in yourself, keep working toward your dreams, there's no limit to what you can achieve." As the girl walked away with a huge smile on her face, Marcus felt Sarah's hand slip into his. "Ready to go home?" she asked. Marcus looked around the Opry one more time, taking in the historic venue where so many of his heroes had performed, where his own dreams had been realized in ways he never could have imagined. "Yeah," he said, "let's go home." Epilogue. 5 years later, Marcus Thompson married Sarah Mitchell on a perfect September afternoon at a small church in Nashville. The ceremony was intimate, with family and close friends filling the pews. Garth Brooks served as best man, and Betty Rodriguez read a scripture about love and second chances. Dorothy Jackson caught the bouquet, claiming it was a sign that her own romantic luck was about to change. The reception was held at the Mercy House shelter, transformed for the evening with string lights and flowers. It was important to both Marcus and Sarah that their celebration take place where their love story had begun, surrounded by the community that had nurtured them both. In the 5 years that followed, Marcus released 3 more albums, each one building on the authentic foundation he'd established with From the Ground Up. He won 2 Grammy Awards, sold out theaters and small arenas across the country, and became known as one of country music's most genuine and socially conscious artists. But success hadn't changed the core of who he was. He and Sarah still lived in the same modest Nashville neighborhood, still volunteered regularly at homeless shelters, and still made their relationship the center of their respective careers, rather than the other way around. Sarah had been promoted to executive director of Mercy House, overseeing an expansion that had doubled the shelter's capacity and added job training and mental health services. Under her leadership, the shelter had become a model for other cities, showing how comprehensive support could help people not just survive their circumstances, but transform their lives. Marcus's latest album, Full Circle, included a song called The Shelter Sessions, which he performed exclusively at homeless shelters and recovery centers around the country. The performances were never advertised publicly, but word would spread through social media, and the videos would go viral, just as his original performance had done years earlier. "Some things never change," Sarah said one evening as they watched footage from Marcus's latest shelter performance on their laptop. "You still have that same look on your face when you play for people who really need to hear music." Marcus smiled, pulling her closer on their couch. "What look is that?" "Like you're exactly where you're supposed to be." Their living room was decorated with gold records and framed photos from award shows. But the centerpiece was a simple black and white photograph from their wedding day, taken at the moment Marcus had sung Home in You to Sarah during their first dance. It captured something that no amount of professional success could replicate: pure, uncomplicated love. "I got a call from Tom today," Marcus said. "He wants to talk about a greatest hits album." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Already? You're only 27. "I know, it seems early, but apparently there's enough material now, and the label thinks it could introduce my music to a wider audience." Marcus paused. "There's something else, though. Garth wants to include our duet from the benefit concert as a bonus track." "That's incredible." That performance was magical. It was. "But Sarah, there's something I haven't told you yet." Marcus took her hands, his expression growing serious. "Tom also mentioned that there's been interest from some major labels again. Big money, massive promotion, the whole thing." Sarah felt a familiar flutter of anxiety. They'd been through this before, and each time Marcus had chosen the path that aligned with his values rather than his bank account. But she knew the pressure never really stopped in the music industry. "What are you thinking?" she asked carefully. "I'm thinking about what we've built here," Marcus said, gesturing around their modest home. "The life we have, the work we do, the people we help. I'm thinking about Emma Rodriguez, who just got accepted to college, and David Harrison, who sends me updates every few months about his new life. I'm thinking about all the people who've told me that my music helped them through dark times. And I'm thinking that success isn't about how big you can get. It's about how much good you can do with the platform you have." Marcus smiled. "So I'm staying with Heartland, staying focused on making music that matters, rather than music that just sells." Sarah felt a wave of love and pride wash over her. "You never cease to amaze me, you know that?" "The feeling is mutual," Marcus replied, leaning in to kiss her. Their conversation was interrupted by Marcus's phone buzzing with a text message. He glanced at it and grinned. "Speaking of people who amaze me," he said, showing Sarah the message. "Look at this." The text was from Jennifer Walsh, the young woman from Denver who had credited Marcus's shelter video with saving her life. The message included a photo of her in graduation robes, holding a diploma. "I defended my doctoral thesis today." The message read, "Starting my own practice next month, specializing in music therapy for trauma survivors. Thank you for showing me that healing is possible. P.S. I played second chances before my defense for luck." Sarah wiped away tears she hadn't realized were forming. "This is why I fell in love with you, you know. Not because you became famous, but because you use your gifts to lift other people up." "We use our gifts," Marcus corrected. "Everything I've accomplished because you believed in me first." That night, as they lay in bed talking about their future, Marcus brought up a topic they'd been discussing more frequently lately. "I've been thinking about kids again," he said softly. "Yeah?" "Yeah. I keep imagining what it would be like to raise children who understand that success means service, that talent is a responsibility, not just an opportunity." Sarah turned to face him in the darkness. "Are you ready for that? Really ready? Because kids would change everything. The touring, the late nights in the studio, the flexibility we have now." "I know," Marcus said, "but I'm 32. You're 30. We've been married for 5 years, and we have a stable life. More importantly, we have something to pass on. Not just money or career success, but values, an understanding of what really matters. What if we had kids who didn't care about music, who wanted to be doctors or teachers or accountants?" Marcus laughed. "Then we'd support their dreams just as much as if they wanted to be musicians. The point isn't to create little versions of ourselves. It's to raise humans who make the world better, whatever form that takes." 6 months later, Sarah and Marcus announced they were expecting their first child. The pregnancy was healthy and uncomplicated, and they spent 9 months preparing not just their home, but their hearts for the adventure of parenthood. Marcus continued touring throughout Sarah's pregnancy, but on a reduced schedule that kept him close to Nashville. During her 3rd trimester, he turned down a lucrative summer festival tour, choosing instead to stay home and prepare for fatherhood. "Some opportunities come back," he told Tom Mitchell, "but your first child is only born once." Isabella Bella Thompson was born on a snowy February morning, exactly 6 years after the release of From the Ground Up. Marcus held his daughter for the first time in the same hospital where he'd been born, marveling at her tiny fingers and the way she seemed to calm down when he hummed softly to her. "She likes music already," Sarah observed from her hospital bed, exhausted but radiant. "She's got good taste," Marcus replied, unable to take his eyes off his daughter. "Takes after her mom." The first year of parenthood was everything Marcus and Sarah had expected, and nothing they could have prepared for. Sleep became a luxury, and their carefully ordered life gave way to the beautiful chaos of caring for an infant. But Marcus discovered that becoming a father didn't diminish his creativity. It expanded it. He wrote some of his most heartfelt songs during those early months, often while walking Bella around their house at 3 a.m., singing softly to help her sleep. One of those late-night compositions became Letter to My Daughter, a song about hopes and dreams and the kind of world he wanted to help create for her. When he performed it for the first time at a benefit concert for children's hospitals, there wasn't a dry eye in the house. "That song is going to be your legacy," Garth told him afterward. "Not because it's going to be a hit, but because it captures something true about love and responsibility." As Bella grew from infant to toddler, Marcus found new ways to balance his career with his family responsibilities. He wrote more from home, toured less frequently but more strategically, and made sure that every professional decision was made with his family's well-being in mind. Sarah returned to work at Mercy House when Bella was 6 months old, but with a modified schedule that allowed her to spend more time at home. The shelter had become her life's work, and she wasn't ready to step away completely, but she also wanted to be present for her daughter's early years. "Balance," she told Marcus one evening, as they watched Bella take her first tentative steps across their living room. "It's not about perfect equilibrium. It's about making intentional choices every single day." On Bella's first birthday, Marcus and Sarah threw a party at their house, inviting the extended family that had grown around them over the years. Betty Rodriguez, now retired but still involved with the shelter, brought homemade cookies. Dorothy Jackson, who had finally found stable housing and a part-time job, arrived with a hand-knitted blanket. Tom Mitchell and his wife brought enough barbecue to feed everyone twice over. But the surprise guest was Garth Brooks, who showed up with a tiny acoustic guitar. Child-sized but perfectly functional. "Every Thompson needs a good guitar," Garth said, as he presented the gift to a delighted Bella, who immediately tried to eat the strings. As the party wound down and guests began to leave, Marcus found himself standing in his backyard, holding his daughter while she dozed against his chest. Sarah joined them, wrapping her arms around both of them. "Remember when you thought your life was over?" she said softly. "Which time?" Marcus replied with a smile. "That first night at the shelter. You were so convinced that you'd failed, that your dreams were finished." Marcus looked down at Bella's sleeping face, then around at their home, filled with friends and family and love. "I had no idea what dreams really looked like," he said. "I thought they were about fame and money and recognition. I didn't know they could look like this, like building a life with someone you love, using your gifts to help others, raising a child who will hopefully make the world a little better." "Do you ever miss it?" Sarah asked. "The possibility of being a huge star, selling out stadiums, having #1 hits?" Marcus considered the question seriously. He did occasionally wonder what his life might have looked like if he'd taken one of those big label deals, if he'd prioritized commercial success over artistic integrity. "Sometimes I wonder," he admitted. "But then I think about all the things I would have missed. I might have been more famous, but I wouldn't have been happier. I might have made more money, but I wouldn't have made more of a difference. Plus," Sarah added with a grin, "you did sell out some stadiums with Garth." "True," Marcus laughed, "and I got to meet my wife in a homeless shelter, which is definitely a better story than meeting her at an industry party." As they stood there in their backyard, holding their daughter under a sky full of stars, Marcus felt the same sense of completion he'd experienced that night at the Grand Ole Opry benefit concert. His journey had brought him from despair to hope, from isolation to love, from uncertainty to purpose. But more than that, it had taught him that the best dreams aren't the ones you chase. They're the ones that find you when you're busy being the person you're meant to be. "What are you thinking about?" Sarah asked, noticing his contemplative expression. "Just grateful," Marcus said simply, "for all of it. The struggles that made me stronger, the music that gave me purpose, the people who believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself, but mostly for you, for this family, for the chance to build something that matters." Bella stirred in his arms, making the soft sounds that babies make when they're dreaming. Marcus wondered what she was dreaming about, what kind of life awaited her, what challenges and triumphs lay ahead. Whatever the future held, he knew that she would grow up understanding something that had taken him years to learn, that success isn't measured by how high you climb, but by how many people you lift up along the way. And in that moment, standing in his backyard with his wife and daughter, surrounded by the quiet contentment of a life well lived, Marcus Thompson knew that he had found everything he'd ever been looking for, and so much more than he'd ever dared to dream.